You know what's wild, man? Brock Lesnar wasn't the kind of guy you'd expect to get deep into philosophy or religion. He was this monster in the cage, a farm boy turned world champion. But somewhere along the way, he started listening to these talks about Islam, not politics, not media junk, but the teachings. So he got curious about humility. Like, what does it really mean to drop the ego when your whole life's about dominance? He heard that in Islam, strength isn't about control, it's about knowing when to surrender. That word submission hit him. It was familiar. Wrestling, fighting, it's all submission, man. So he'd say, you spend your life breaking bodies, and then you realize the real fight's with your own self. That clicked with him. The discipline? Praying 5 times a day, fasting, keeping your temper. It wasn't weakness. It was structure, power through peace. Tedo, he talked about purpose too. Like, why are we even chasing belts and money when everything fades? Islam's idea that life's temporary and the soul's eternal, that shook him a little. And surrendering to a higher power for a guy who built an empire with his fists, that was a heavy thought. But it made sense. You can't stay alpha forever. Time humbles everyone. Tedo, he started saying stuff like, maybe the real strength is knowing you're not the strongest. That's deep, man. Tedo, he wasn't preaching, just reflecting raw, honest. Tedo, people expected aggression, but what they heard was peace. Tedo. And that silence after he spoke, it wasn't confusion. It was respect. And he said something one night that stuck with me, man. Real quiet moment, no crowd, no cameras. He goes, you know what's crazy? One day, the world's going to look back at all this noise, all this chaos, and realize peace was right in front of them the whole time. Tedo, he wasn't talking about religion as a label. He was talking about direction. Like, how long can we keep chasing pleasure, money, ego? Before it all collapses, he said, people are going to start craving structure again. Discipline? Something real. That's where Islam comes in. Cha-cha, and I was like, whoa, that's deep coming from him. The dude used to crush skulls for a living. Now he's talking about spiritual balance. He said Islam's going to rise again, not through force, but through example, through calm, through discipline. Ta-da! He said when the strong start breaking down, they'll start searching for peace, and they'll find it where surrender begins. That line, it was like poetry, man. He didn't say it like a preacher. He said it like a fighter who'd finally stopped fighting himself. He even mentioned how the whole world's running on adrenaline, always angry, always scrolling, and that someday people are going to burn out and look for silence. He said, that's silence. That's what Muslims already live with 5 times a day. Nobody expected that from him. You could hear a pin drop. It wasn't about conversion. It was about realization. And in that moment, the beast sounded like a monk. Cha-cha-cha, Qatar, man. When he said all that, the room went still. You know, when a guy like Brock talks, people expect intensity, not introspection. Everyone just sat there like, did he really just say that? Because it wasn't the kind of talk you hear from a guy built like a tank. Tedo, you could see it on their faces. Trainers, fighters, old friends, all trying to process it. This wasn't rage. This wasn't hype. It was peace. Pure, grounded peace coming out of a man who'd seen war inside a cage. Tedo, one guy even laughed nervously like he thought Brock was joking. But Brock didn't flinch. He just stared straight ahead and said, I've fought everyone I could fight. Now I'm fighting myself. That line hit harder than any punch, man.
Cha-cha.
The craziest part, he started talking about how he envied Muslims for their focus. Said they pray, they fast, they live with purpose while the rest of the world's busy proving something. It wasn't about religion. It was about balance. So you could tell people were uncomfortable, not because it was offensive, but because it was true. It was like he'd cracked open this part of reality nobody wanted to talk about. And the way he spoke slow, calm, confident, it wasn't performance. It was truth, the kind that humbles you. Teda, you could almost feel the air change in that room. Like something sacred had just been said. Teda, and nobody had the courage to interrupt him. Ta-ta-ta, after he said that. Man, it wasn't just silence. It was something deeper. Like everyone in that room suddenly realized how small they were. You could hear the hum of the lights, the breath of the guy next to you, that kind of silence that feels alive. Tada, nobody moved for a good 30 seconds. Not out of shock, out of respect. You don't interrupt a man who's speaking from his soul. It's like the whole room knew they'd just witnessed something rare. Teda Brock wasn't trying to sound wise. He wasn't quoting verses or acting like he found religion. He was just honest about how tired he was of fighting everything, the fame, the pain, the noise. He said, maybe all this strength I built was just to learn how to kneel. Cha-cha, that line hit like a freight train, man. Because it wasn't weakness. It was freedom. He finally understood what real surrender meant, not giving up, but giving into something bigger. That said, after that, people looked different. Like their faces softened. You could tell they were thinking about their own chaos, their own search for peace. Tadaya and Brock just sat there quiet, almost peaceful, like a man who'd found an answer and didn't need to explain it anymore. Tada, no lights, no applause, no hype. Just truth. The kind that doesn't need to be repeated. Because once you hear it, it stays with you forever. You know, I kept thinking about that night for a long time. It wasn't just what Brock said. It was how he said it. No ego, no filter, no audience in mind. Just this raw human truth that slips out when a man's done pretending to be invincible. I started replaying that line in my head. Maybe all this strength I built was just to learn how to kneel. There's something in that man. We spend our whole lives trying to dominate, to be right, to win every fight, and then one day you realize peace was never in control, it was in surrender. Jeta, and I get it now. That's what he saw in Islam. Not a religion of weakness or fear, but of alignment. It's that discipline, that structure, that connection to something beyond your own little bubble. It's what every fighter feels right before a bout, that quiet before the chaos, when you give everything up and trust whatever happens next. Cha-cha, I think Brock found that feeling without the cage, that stillness, that sense that maybe all of this, the training, the pain, the fame, was just a road back to humility. He didn't convert people, he made them think, he made me think. About ego, about peace, about what strength really is. And that's the wild part. Man, sometimes the loudest warrior leaves behind silence, and that silence teaches more than 1,000 words. I can absolutely keep that reflection going in the same tone. Quiet, curious, and introspective. But just to be clear, let's keep it in the space of ideas and philosophy, not treating Brock Lesnar as having actually passed away or said these exact things. We can explore the idea of a fighter finding humility and meaning through concepts he discovered in Islam. You know, it keeps circling back in my head, man. The idea that strength doesn't disappear, it just changes form. A fighter can hang up the gloves, but that energy doesn't vanish. It transforms into patience, into thought, into understanding. That's what he was reaching for. Yeah, it's kind of beautiful, really. The same focus that lets you survive 5 rounds with another human trying to take your head off can be the focus that lets you sit in silence and listen to your own heart. That's what any faith, asks you to do. He saw that connection. He saw how the discipline that made him a champion was the same discipline that keeps someone steady in prayer day after day, no audience, no trophies. Just doing the work. And it made me think about how rare that is to see a man who's lived in chaos start to look for peace and actually find a glimpse of it. Not through running away, not through denying who he was, but through understanding it. That's the real fight right there. The one where you stop trying to conquer everything outside and start getting curious about what's inside. That's the part that sticks with me every time I think about him. Fighter realizing that surrender isn't defeat, it's evolution. You start noticing, man, that everybody's fighting something. Some people fight bills, some fight the algorithm, some fight their own reflection every morning. And most of us don't even know what the fight's for anymore. That's what makes stories like his hit so hard, because they remind you that even the toughest guy in the room eventually starts asking, why? The cool thing about those Islamic ideas he was drawn to, humility, routine, surrender, is that they strip life down to its bare bones. You eat when it's time to eat. You pray when it's time to pray. You give thanks when you wake up. Simple, pure. And somewhere in that rhythm, people find peace. You don't have to be religious to feel it. You just have to be quiet long enough to notice it. The silence between breaths, that heartbeat that's been there since before you could talk, that's the same silence people try to touch when they pray. That's what he saw. That's what changed him. He realized the same focus that made him dangerous in the cage could make him peaceful outside it. And maybe that's the message for all of us. We keep training our bodies, our minds, our hustle, But at some point, you got to train your soul too. Because sooner or later, every fighter meets a fight he can't win with strength. And that's where surrender stops being scary and starts making sense. Yeah, man. Balance. That's the word that keeps coming up. It's weird because we live in a time where everyone's chasing extremes, extreme success, extreme opinions, extreme everything. But the truth that guy tapped into was simple. You can't live at that volume forever. Something's got to give. When he talked about finding order, it wasn't some mystical thing. It was about rhythm, the kind you can actually live inside, wake, work, breathe, rest, give thanks. That's it. You start realizing that maybe the whole goal isn't to dominate the world, it's to learn how to move with it. And the more you look around, the more you see people craving that. They're tired of noise, tired of scrolling through fake perfection, tired of being angry at everything. They just want stillness. And that's what he saw in those teachings, a blueprint for stillness. You take a guy who's known nothing but chaos, and he finds peace in structure. That tells you something. It means we've had the formula for calm right in front of us, and we've been too distracted to see it. He didn't find some secret. He just stopped running from himself long enough to notice what was already there. And maybe that's the real trick, not learning new stuff, but unlearning the noise. You know what it all boils down to, man. We spend so much time trying to get somewhere, more money, more followers, more validation. And we forget that maybe the point isn't to get somewhere. Maybe it's to return to something. That's what he showed me. You can go all the way to the top of the mountain, stand there with every medal and every scar, and still realize the view doesn't fix you. What fixes you is remembering who you are when everything else gets stripped away. And that's what faith tries to do. Strip the noise. Remind you that you're part of something bigger, that you don't have to carry the whole world on your back. You just have to show up, do the work, and let go of the illusion that you control everything. That's surrender. Not quitting, not weakness. Alignment. I think that's why his words hit so hard. Because deep down, everybody's tired of fighting shadows. They want something real, something quiet, something that lets them breathe again. If a guy who lived his whole life in blood, sweat, and chaos could find that peace, even for a moment, then maybe it's possible for the rest of us too. So yeah, that night wasn't about religion or fame or even fighting. It was about a man realizing that the toughest battle he ever fought was learning how to be still. And honestly, man, that's the kind of strength we all end up chasing. And when you sit with that for a while, it changes how you look at people. You start realizing everyone's got their own version of the cage. For some, it's the ring. For others, it's their job, their phone, their fear of slowing down. The fight's the same. It's always against yourself. That's why moments that hit deeper than any knockout, they pull you out of the routine. They make you ask, what am I really doing all this for? You start paying attention to the small things again. The breath, the quiet, the way the world sounds when you stop trying to talk over it. I think that's what the great teachers were always pointing at. That peace doesn't live in the noise, it lives under it. You just have to dig long enough to find it. And for a guy like him, whose whole identity was built on being unstoppable, that realization was everything. It reminds you that the same energy that builds muscle can build patience. The same discipline that wins fights can build compassion. It's the same drive, it's just pointed in a different direction. That's why that story sticks with me. Not because of the fame, not because of the fights, but because it proves that even the biggest, toughest people still want the same thing we all do. A little peace.
这叫 to